The observation deck of the celestial harmonium hummed with the low vibration of its quantum drives, a sound that would have terrified most species but had become a lullaby to the orphaned cubs aboard. Kiro pressed his small, furred face against the reinforced glass, his triple-jointed ears twitching at every distant footfall in the corridor beyond. Behind him, 11 other cubs from 7 different species huddled together, their breathing synchronized in the way prey animals do when predators lurk nearby. But they weren't waiting for a predator. They were waiting for Arya Ven. "She's late," chirped Vesa, a Quilorian whose feathers had only just begun showing their adult iridescence. Her species measured time in heartbeats, and by her count, Arya was 14,000 heartbeats overdue. "Humans don't abandon," Kiro said firmly, though his claws kneaded anxiously at the observation deck floor. At 8 standard cycles old, he was the eldest, which meant the weight of hope or the crushing burden of its loss fell on his shoulders. "She said she'd come back. She promised." The word promise carried weight among the cubs that it didn't carry in the broader galactic community. Most species viewed promises as social contracts, breakable under sufficient duress or inconvenience. But the cubs had learned that humans treated promises like physical laws, immutable and absolute. Arya had explained it once. In that gentle way she had. "Where I come from, a promise isn't just words. It's a piece of your soul you give to someone else to keep safe." The cubs didn't fully understand human souls, but they understood that Arya had given them something precious. 3 weeks ago, the Celestial Harmonium, a refugee vessel carrying the last survivors of the Epsilon genocide, had suffered a catastrophic engine failure in the void between. That terrible expanse of space where even light feared to travel. The adult crew had gone into emergency stasis to conserve oxygen, leaving the ship's AI to manage life support for the cubs who were too young for the procedure. But the AI had malfunctioned, and for 6 days, 12 small beings had huddled in darkness, their food processors offline, their water recyclers failing, and their minds slowly accepting that they would die alone in the black. Then Arya Ven's patrol ship had detected their distress beacon. She had come aboard alone, her crew was 3 systems away on another rescue, and she'd found the cubs. Kiro still remembered the moment the airlock had hissed open and this strange, furless biped had stepped through wearing that bizarre pressure suit humans favored. Her species had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no pack mind. They were cosmically fragile, and yet she'd navigated a dying ship to reach them. "Hello, little ones," she'd said, her voice crackling through her helmet speakers. "I'm Arya. Let's get you somewhere safe." For 2 weeks, she'd kept them alive. She'd manually rerouted power, coaxed the food processors back online with a combination of engineering and what she called percussive maintenance, hitting things until they worked. She'd told them stories about Earth, about wolves and elephants and whales, about animals that adopted orphans from other species. She'd sung them to sleep with songs in a dozen human languages, and then, yesterday morning, she'd received an emergency transmission. A human colony world was under attack, and every available ship was being called to evacuate civilians. The Harmonium's adult crew would wake from stasis within 48 hours. The cubs would be fine. "I have to go," Arya had told them, kneeling so she was at Kiro's eye level. "But I promise, I'll come back to check on you before you reach the refugee station." Kiro had wanted to ask, "What if you die in the evacuation?" But he'd seen the steel in her eyes and knew that human promises transcended even death. If Arya said she'd return, she would. Somehow, now, as the corridor lights flickered, the harmonium was still barely functional. Kiro's ears swiveled forward. Footsteps, the distinctive rhythm of human bipedal locomotion, that strange 2-beat pattern that sounded like a heartbeat externalized. "She's coming," he whispered. The cubs scrambled into position. It had been Vesa's idea, this ambush. "Humans play," she'd observed. "When they're happy, they wrestle." Arya told us about human cubs tackling their parents. "It's how they show love," the door panel chimed. Kiro's haunches tensed. The door slid open, and there stood Arya Ven, still in her pressure suit, her helmet tucked under one arm. Her face was smudged with soot, her eyes red-rimmed from smoke and exhaustion. But she was smiling, that uniquely human expression that showed teeth but meant joy rather than threat. "Hey, cubs," she began. "Sorry I'm late. The evacuation took longer than—" Kiro pounced. He hit her center mass with all the force his compact frame could muster, and the other cubs followed, a cascade of fur, feathers, scales, and chitin. Arya made a sound somewhere between a laugh and an oof as she went down, cushioning her fall so none of them got hurt. They piled on top of her, purring, chirping, clicking, humming in their various languages of affection. Okay. Arya laughed, the sound rumbling through her chest where Kiro had pressed his ear. "I missed you too. You little ambush predators. You came back," Kiro said, his voice muffled against her suit. "You promised, and you came back." Arya's arms wrapped around as many of them as she could reach. "Of course I did. Humans keep their promises, remember? Even when you're needed elsewhere?" asked Vesa, her feathers fluffed with emotion. "Even when your own people are in danger?" Arya was quiet for a moment, and Kiro felt her heartbeat, that steady, determined rhythm that had become the cub's metronome for survival. "There were 40,000 humans on that colony world," she said softly. "We evacuated 39,847. The rest, they didn't make it." The cubs went still. They understood loss. "But you're here," Kiro said. "With us." "Because I promised," Arya replied, and her voice carried the weight of those 153 lives she hadn't saved, and the 12 she had. "Because you matter. Because in a galaxy that's tried to snuff you out, someone needs to look you in the eyes and say, 'You're worth coming back for.'" Kiro felt something wet drop onto his fur, and realized the human was crying, that strange way humans released grief through water from their eyes. But she was still smiling. "Now," Arya said, her voice regaining its strength, "I brought something from the evacuation. One of the refugee families wanted you to have it." She reached into her pack and pulled out a data crystal. "It's a compilation of lullabies from 200 different species, so you never forget where you come from." The cubs huddled closer, and Arya activated the crystal. The observation deck, filled with music, haunting, beautiful, and utterly alive. Outside the window, the stars wheeled by, indifferent to suffering, indifferent to love, but inside, 12 orphans and one exhausted human created their own constellation, a pattern of belonging that would survive whatever darkness the universe threw at them, because humans kept their promises, and cubs pounced on the ones they loved.